Awesome. Thank you so much for hosting me to the AltLayer team. YQ, it's always good to see you. I think last year we did a panel together. If you remember that one, a lot of stories about that one. But thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I want to walk through some of the differentiators of Arbitrum. We have a tagline called Arbitrum Everywhere, so you can understand some of the thesis and the strategy behind the future of what we're trying to build. When we think about Arbitrum, and I think Arbitrum is extremely uniquely placed in the market as a technology platform, we don't think of it as a blockchain, and we don't think of it as a technology stack. Some of you may use Arbitrum 1 and view that, in your mind, that's what Arbitrum is. Others, if you're building an orbit chain with AltLayer, for example, you might view Arbitrum as a technology stack. In reality, we view it as a platform. And the goal of this platform is to ensure that we can provide a technology that can help developers throughout their journey and throughout their life cycle. And I'm going to show you some case studies at the end of exactly what that means. Arbitrum is uniquely placed. It has a top 5 blockchain by economic activity in Arbitrum 1 and a top 3 stack by adoption. That means when you're building with Arbitrum, you don't have to choose a technology solution that doesn't match your current needs. You can evolve as a technology partner alongside us. And I want to walk you through some of the technical differences of Arbitrum, and you can understand. So just at a high level, and this is true for like layer 2 technology broadly, it's a scaling solution that scales and is secured by Ethereum. So all transactions that occur on Arbitrum 1, or if you launch your own Arbitrum chain on the platform, goes to Ethereum. It's about 10 to 100 times cheaper, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And that's generally true across all layer 2 blockchain technologies. And just to sort of graph Ethereum costs versus Arbitrum, you see a lot of volatility in Ethereum where it might be on the average about 16 cents, and the average Arbitrum transaction over the last year, slightly more than a year, is about a half a penny. So that means in the average layer code, you're seeing about a 30x delta in transaction fees. And that really has unlocked a lot of new use cases. But one of the core differences in technology that we see on the Arbitrum side is Arbitrum Stylus. When we think about the EVM is probably the most powerful technology platform that exists for building in blockchain architecture. From our perspective, the EVM is the floor and not the ceiling. And it's a really important component because I remember in 2021, when we were launching the first version of Arbitrum, the fact that we were able to build an L2 with EVM compatibility, that in and of itself was a feat. But we always really viewed that as a floor. And what I mean by that is we need to bring the world to Ethereum. We don't need to bring Solidity developers. There's about maybe 25,000 Solidity developers, 50,000 Solidity developers in the world. There are tens of millions of people that are building developers generally. So we added a second virtual machine to the Arbitrum stack, a WASM-based virtual machine that allows you to program in Rust, C, and C++ and fully interoperate with the EVM. So that doesn't mean when you launch an Arbitrum chain that you have to choose whether it's Rust or C or the EVM. It means you can take a code base that's 100% written in Rust and fully interoperate with EVM apps, Uniswap, Aave, and any other applications. And we think this is extremely powerful. It unlocks bringing a whole new developer base on-chain. It unlocks new use cases. It unlocks advanced cryptography. We've seen teams, for example, building dark pool AMMs and order books with a lot of advanced cryptography and ZK proofs built using the Arbitrum Stylus stack. So Arbitrum Stylus launched about 12 months ago, and we've been investing heavily in the tooling to ensure that we can continue to support beyond just purely an EVM environment. Another one is speed. The Arbitrum blockchain, so a lot of blockchains are improving their speed. Arbitrum, when it launched, has always had very fast blocks. The average blocks is about 280 milliseconds. You can, on the Orbit stack, run chains at Arbitrum chains at 100 milliseconds today, and we're getting that down to about 50 milliseconds next quarter. Speed is really important. A lot of Arbitrum builders, especially perps protocols, other forms of leverage, really care about speed. Oracle updates is extremely important, and that's been a very core differentiator, and one of the key reasons I think that the DeFi ecosystem on Arbitrum has particularly evolved so nicely. Last one is time boost. One thing that we always talk about is MEV, maximum extractable value. it's impossible to get rid of in blockchains. For those who are less familiar, the concept of maximum extractable value essentially is ordering in blockchain. So if people want to submit transactions, there's different ways that those transactions can be submitted. And the way we've designed Arbitrum historically, until about 3 months ago, it used a first come, first serve system. And some people think that's the most equitable and fair. And the reality of a first come, first serve system is that largely for transaction inclusion, it's very fair. The problem is that it gives a huge advantage to those that have the ability to optimize latency and co-location. And what we saw and what turned out to be the reality is that the first come, first serve model actually leaked out a lot of economic value because people were just paying for AWS servers to co-locate with the sequencer to get their transactions in first. So what we built was Time Boost. And Time Boost is a mechanism that keeps the principles that we wanted, which are no front running of transactions, and also transactions should be private, while having the ability to internalize the MEV. And the way Time Boost works is every minute there is an auction in which a bidder can submit that they want to win the Time Boost auction round. And what that affords them is that their transactions will be submitted without seeing the mempool 100 milliseconds more quickly. And what that allows them to do is to get the transactions in without the ability to front run, but can effectively capture back running opportunities. So Time Boost is just in its early infancy, but we've seen that the Arbitrum DAO has collected somewhere between $3 and $4 million this quarter based on the integration of Time Boost. And the last is Orbit. And obviously we work very closely with the AltLayer team. One of the things that we try to build with our Orbit stack, which is the ability to launch your own Arbitrum chain, is we want to make it the most customizable and flexible SDK that exists. Our thesis is not that the world needs more blockchains, it's that the blockchain should become a part of the product. And when we build our SDK, we prioritize how do we add more features, whether that's alternative data availability, privacy, compliance, custom gas tokens, whatever the developer needs to make sure that the blockchain can be a part of the broader product. That's our focus and goal. So I just want to walk you through a little bit of adoption that we're seeing on Arbitrum. This number actually crossed $20 billion today. So Arbitrum 1, which is the public blockchain controlled by the DAO, has a little bit more than $20 billion in assets on chain. It's controlling about 35% of the overall rollup market share, that size being like hundreds of different chains. And what we're seeing is that across DeFi, Arbitrum continues to be the winner. Outside of Ethereum, across Fluid, Compound, Aave, Arbitrum is the largest layer 2, and outside of now Plasma, which launched last week, is the largest instantiation other than Ethereum. And we continue to see growth in Uniswap, which is obviously the large EVM DEX across all ecosystems. But what we've been doing is, we've been building this DeFi ecosystem for probably the last 4 or 5 years. But I would say particularly over the last 18 months, we've seen a really strong convergence of DeFi builders and DeFi innovation meeting traditional financial institutions and asset managers. And Arbitrum is the best home for them to build. And we've brought on chain Franklin Templeton, BlackRock, Wisdom Tree have all launched money market funds. Spyco is offering European T-bill services. They have about $250 million on Arbitrum. Invesco is bringing private credit. And probably most famously, the Arbitrum partnership with Robinhood, which is bringing tokenized equities on Arbitrum on-chain. We've also seen significant adoption across Tether, which uses Arbitrum as the core interoperability hub for USDT0. PayPal's launch of PIUSD, again, Arbitrum is the core interoperability hub, as well as the traditional players. And what's interesting about this, and particularly on the stablecoin side, is Arbitrum's position of credible neutrality. So Arbitrum is not only the most liquid environment for stablecoins, it is the most diverse environment for stablecoins. And that is really critical, because many of these different stablecoins will be more proliferated in different use cases. You might see PayPal and payments and Circle and DeFi, and Arbitrum is the home for all of them. Just to show you one example of a case study of how Arbitrum has been supporting the growth of stablecoins. So Tether historically has had their native minting across Ethereum, Telegram, and Tron. And they want to bring that everywhere. So they've partnered with USDT Zero, and Arbitrum sits at the core of that hub. So every time you see transactions that are going from Ethereum, for example, to Berachain, that transaction actually settles on Arbitrum 1. The Tether team with USD Zero chose Arbitrum to be the core hub, and that's a really exciting moment for us. If you look at the liquidity generally across L2s, Arbitrum's in about $9.5 billion, with the second being Base at a little bit more than $4 billion. RWAs, which is generally like these money market funds, private credits, tokenized stocks, is really just starting to take off. Like I said, about 18 months ago, we saw a significant spike, and we've got almost $500 million in RWA assets. The goal and strategy that we're focusing on now is how do we take the $1 billion of Arbitrum DeFi and this huge surge of RWA assets that are coming on chain to create the most productive environments for users, developers, and applications. I just want to walk you through one case study so you can sort of just see this in action. We're seeing this convergence of DeFi and TradFi. Robinhood is bringing tokenized stocks. BlackRock is bringing money market funds. USDT Zero and Paxos are bringing stablecoins. And we have these Arbitrum ecosystem teams like Hyperliquid, which is sourcing $5 billion of USDC from Arbitrum. GMX, Pendle, Ostium, they're all focusing on creating the new rails to allow these traditional RWA players to come on chain. And just one case study to sort of understand with Robinhood, that vision of the Arbitrum platform that I showed you at the beginning. So one of the main reasons why Arbitrum was chosen by Robinhood was because precisely of this dual strategy that they wanted to build. For them, it was very important to get the tokenized equities product on chain on June 30th. They were not ready to launch their own blockchain at the time, but they knew in the long run for their business use cases and needs that this was a very important thing for them to do. So they chose to launch an Arbitrum 1, work with us in parallel to develop a chain, and we're really the only ones that were able to offer them that service. They didn't want to work with two different partners, one to launch in the short time on a public chain, and then to use a different stack. And that was one of the core differentiators and unique features of Arbitrum, is the ability to migrate from an extremely liquid environment to their own, utilizing the same technology and the same team. The way the Robinhood chain and the equities works under the hood, in case you're curious, is you have a user who buys a stock, and then it works its way basically through a very complex architecture, but most importantly, it's really about this tokenization engine. The way it works is they take these assets that they get from the broker-dealer, and they're minting and burning the assets through tokenization and utilizing their exchange with Bitstamp to bring these assets into 24/7 trading in a tokenized form. In the next phase, once this has been implemented, the vision is to be able to have these tokens exist in permissionless fashion throughout DeFi. And that's really the focus of where we're spending our time at Arbitrum today, is that precise convergence. How do we take tokenized assets that are coming through regulated US broker-dealers, getting liquidity on chain and through centralized exchanges, and allow those assets to proliferate throughout DeFi? And we think Arbitrum is best situated to support that future vision. So if you're working on anything that you think we can help with, we'd love to chat with you. And here's the best email to get in touch with our team. Thank you very much.